Make space, boost your efficiency, and increase data security by putting your PCs in a secure climate-controlled server room. Pathfinder KVM over IP is totally scalable, making it perfect for single rooms, entire floors and buildings, or even across an entire campus with thousands of users. It is available in 4K and 1080p variants and is rugged and fanless. Monitor multiple PCs on a single 4K display, or view up to 16 computers on a single workstation, even when accessing remote systems. Let Pathfinder help you and your teams work together.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Greg DeSell from TechNet, and thank you for joining us as part of TechNet's ongoing webinar tech series. As today, we are here to talk about zero latency KVM over IP solutions with our partners at tvONE. Before we get going, I want to thank our friends at tvONE and also take a moment to point out a few things to keep in mind as we roll along. We've set aside 45 minutes to go over the key features of the Pathfinder KVM over IP system and 15 minutes at the end for a Q&A session. Please take note of the Q&A section in your Zoom control panel. We welcome your questions and we'll do our best to answer them during the presentation or in the Q&A sessions. And for any that we may not get to, we can certainly follow up with you directly after today's presentation. Also, if you're experiencing any technical issues with the video or audio, please alert us in the chat section. So now that we have the general housekeeping out of the way, let's get started. TechNet Distributing and tvONE have been partners for well over 20 years, from our beginning days of reselling the very once famous DV converters and now evolving to the CorioMaster line in today's Pathfinder KVM over IP solutions. That said, I happily introduce to you today from tvONE and its global product manager for the past 7 years, Mr. Mark Arman. Mark has worked with us in many facets of the broadcast video industry as an editor, a cameraman, and engineer for the likes of Morgan Stanley, Pfizer, and ABI SPL. He joined Magenta Research close to when the brand merged with tvONE, and he currently manages all Magenta branded signal extension, distribution, and switching products. Welcome, and thanks for being here today with us, Mark.
Thanks for having me. I guess we should get going here, right? Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining. I really appreciate your time. As you heard, I am the global product manager for tvONE, and I manage currently all the Magenta branded items. In the past, I've managed items like CorioMaster and CorioMatrix. And today we want to talk about one of our new products that just launched this year, actually at ISE in February. It's our Pathfinder KVM over IP product. So yeah, let's jump in. Please, as I'm going through this, if you've got questions or whatever, feel free to put them in the chat there. However, I don't mind interacting with folks. Makes me feel like pre-COVID days where we could do this in person. Here's an agenda of what I'm going to cover today, and we can go as high level or deep into these things as you want. But essentially, we're going to introduce the product, talk about how some of the key features, how we use it, how we control it, some of the typical applications for that, where you'll find KVM and where Pathfinder really fits well. A little bit about our network requirements and design, and then we'll go on with the rest of our day. So let's jump into this. KVM. Not everybody recognizes the word KVM, the letters KVM, keyboard, video, mouse. This, to a lot of people, used to be the sort of the ka-chunk switch in the rack, going down to a terminal just right there at your fingertips. That is a KVM switch. But when you put all that on the network, you start to get some really more interesting solutions and robust applications that we can use those in. And so here's some of the key features for Pathfinder. It's easy to set up, 4K as well as HD extension and switching, our zero latency performance. We measure at our components, we should be at less than 5 milliseconds of latency, but when we actually measure it, we find that there's actually zero, which is mind-bendingly fast and responsive, and you see that when you use the product. Um, Fully transparent USB, we'll talk about that a little bit as we go on here and what that means, how that differentiates a video extension product with USB versus a KVM solution. Um, Pathfinder's super scalable, over 3,000 endpoints in a system. You just need a big switch. There's never any licensing fees or hidden costs. There's no proprietary switches or user licenses, things like that. It's just endpoints, and we use standard networking switches, and we'll talk about what you need to kind of to have in order to make a Pathfinder system work. Um, and we will talk about some of these in a little bit more depth, but cross-click window view, these are super unique to Pathfinder, and I think you guys will find them pretty compelling. Um, the inherent security of the system, we support um, a lot of what is expected by a KVM solution. By some, there's already obviously solutions out there, and what I can say is that we do what the big boys do in this space, but a couple other really neat things to sort of give us some room to grow. So let's look at the product. This is usually the way I learn and discover what a product can do, and how I start my thing is just looking at the back of it. So there's actually two series, and they can be used together. We have a 4K series, which is the 800, and we have a 500 series, which is our HD. 10 gig for 4K, 1 gig for HD. DisplayPort 1.2 is what we've settled on for 4K. And DVI-I, which gives us legacy support and an easy conversion to HDMI for our 500 series. We also, as a video guy, I just thought that HDCP was a requirement, and so we did it. But it turns out to be sort of a unique feature in the KVM space. That was not our intention, but it is. It's hard to find, and so great. That's one of our unique selling points, is that we are HDCP compliant. You can use your satellite boxes or cable TV, sources in your KVM system, as well as if somebody walks in with a Mac or something like that, and that it flips on HDCP content, that's a protection. That's okay. That's not going to break your Pathfinder system. We welcome it. Another important feature about these is that the endpoints are all SFP based. And so when you choose an encoder or a decoder, you also want to pick an SFP, whether that's multi-mode or single mode fiber, or an RJ45 SFP. So if you want to use copper, that's an option. You can mix them and match them however you want to do it to sort of grow your Pathfinder network out. You can put a 1 gig into a 10 gig decoder, but you can't put a 10 gig encoder into a 1 gig decoder. It just doesn't fit. But we'll talk about how you can mix these endpoints and get some pretty neat features from doing that. So, briefly, let's just talk about why people use KVM. From a point-to-point standpoint, Pathfinder works great. You can use this point-to-point, and it gives you things like the ability to put those PCs that are down at your feet, put them into a secure place, and keep your safe space, keep your working environment clean, get rid of fans and sensitive machines and things like that. You can secure them, keep them safe, and so we do that just fine, point to point, no big deal. Now, if we as soon as we add a switch, then we become sort of a matrixed environment, obviously, and now we start to look at things like workstations and sources and video walls and stuff like that. Very typical of a control space. It's going to be a couple workstations like this and a video wall up at the front. I should mention that we know some really great guys that do some really good video wall processors, and that's definitely a reason why we're in this space. The Well, I mentioned cross-click and how you control the system. Let's sort of jump into that a little bit. So cross-click, what is it? So this is the idea of having a workstation, having multiple PCs on a workstation and controlling them all by a single keyboard and mouse. So if you will, this is a 3 display workstation. We can imagine that each one of those displays is a different PC, and I can roll my mouse between those displays just like that was an extended desktop. But it's not. They're 3 different machines. I'm not doing any special clicks with the keyboard or function keys or anything like that. It's just moving my mouse seamlessly between those monitors. Wherever my mouse is, that's where my keyboard is controlling. I can control up to 16 PCs from one cross-click group or one workstation, one keyboard, one mouse. There's no additional hardware. There's no USB aggregates or other devices. It's all baked right into the endpoints. And so this gives you that ability to sort of build these interesting workstations and control a bunch of PCs, just like a user would expect to if it was an extended desktop. Another really unique feature to Pathfinder is window view. So this is the ability to take 4 1080p sources and quad view them onto a 4K display. So now I'm seeing those sources in real time, in full resolution, and I can move my mouse between those quadrants and essentially different PCs, just like they were extended desktops or whatever. There's no, again, no special clicks or hotkeys or whatever. This starts to get really powerful when you combine these 2 features, when you combine window view with cross-click. And so now, again, I'm still limited to 16 PCs to a single cross-click group. So here I've got 3 screens, that's 12 sources. I could add one more essentially in this configuration, and I'd have my 16 PCs. But I don't have to. Some of them could be full screen. Some of them could be in window view mode. However you want to do it. Same functionality as you'd expect from cross-click. I can move between monitors, no big deal. I can move between quadrants. That window view lets me do it. And then if I double tap Control on my keyboard, I can just change whatever quadrant my mouse is in to a full screen or back out. So now my users can monitor, again, in real time at full resolution, multiple sources, and then go full screen or zoom into those sources as needed as the event comes up. Typically, you're going to control Pathfinder as an end user from your on-screen display, from your keyboard and your mouse. You don't need a touch panel. You don't need another set of control interface. You've already got one. And so we've got an OSD. You can set up user-definable hotkeys or presets or things like that if you want. But primarily, you're going to control Pathfinder right from there. We've also got Pathfinder control software. This is free. You install it onto a Windows 10 PC, and one of these needs to be on the Pathfinder network, controlling and managing that session. Pathfinder is a layer 2 IP product. So layer 1 is a cable. Layer 2 is when the switches identify each other devices based on MAC address. Layer 3 would be when we start introducing IP addresses. So because of that, because we're on layer 2, we don't configure our endpoints. You don't have to have a list of IP addresses or whatever. Everything is auto-discovered essentially. So you start to get this plug and play feature set of an IP product that you don't normally get. You've kind of have to coax them onto the right gateway or whatever, or subnet, and that's not the case here. Being on layer 2, we're noisy. We have to be on our own switch or our own VLAN, and so we become sort of our own isolated network, if you will, and that's because of the nature of what we're doing here. So on that Pathfinder network that you're creating, and you're gonna need a session of Pathfinder control. And this is, Pathfinder control is where you're gonna do the things like configure your groups, set up your users, create your different workstations, things like that. You can use it to route and make all the changes you want at a workstation, but that it's typically a lot easier just to use your keyboard. So it's more of an administrative or overlook kind of control platform, but this is the use of it. You can also do things we call them scenarios, which is basically a system wide preset. Where if I want to change everything, all my workstations, whatever, to Tuesday's setting, I can do that from one place and one click. I can also manage all my firmware and updates and things like that. Again, admin tool.
Mark, if I could interject for a moment, that
absolutely.
the control software is PC only, correct? That's probably rare to have a full Mac network anyway, but
no, that's a good point. And yeah. So we recommend Windows 10. It will. You can run it on lower versions of Windows, but yep, if your machine has the guts to run Windows 10, that's all you need to run
okay.
this lightweight application. Yeah, great, thank you. Here's a cute picture of Pathfinder control being able to kind of set up those endpoints, set up that workstation, not just a point-to-point sort of setup anymore. Now we're into a matrix. Let's talk a little bit about the applications where you might find these solutions useful and why. So there's a lot of places that you might find KVM, and here's just a few that we think are worthy to note. So command and control. This is probably the most common space where you're going to find users working on multiple PCs and needing to do that to do their job. Again, big video wall in the front of the room, multiple workstations. What's unique about using a KVM over IP solution is that those workstations that's not necessarily one person's position. You can set those workstations up on the fly to whoever wants to sit down or log into it. So it kind of gives you a flexible space to operate from. Some of the features that we provide that really fit well into this space, our MTBF is over 80,000 hours. Everything that Magenta has done since its beginning is focused on mission critical stability and robustness. So you find that here as well. There's no active cooling or little bits and pieces that fall off or break over time. This is a passively cooled, rock solid endpoint that you're putting in place. The features like I mentioned, cross-click, USB sharing. So I mentioned USB transparency. So what does that mean? So USB transparency is based upon the fact that Pathfinder is an FPGA based product. This is not a chipset. We actually developed the whole codec and the whole system from the ground up. So a lot of solutions out there in the world will use pre-baked chips to manage their USB streams, and so when you do that, that means that if someone has an compatibility issue, you might see that across multiple solutions because they're all using the same chipset. Well, if we have a compatibility issue on USB, we can fix that. We can look at it and we can change our firmware. Essentially, it's just a firmware update. It also gives us the ability to do some really neat things like looking at that USB stream and controlling it, like locking out certain functionality like USB storage devices and stuff like that. But it also gives us the ability to share. So I can have multiple users working on the same machine at the same time. Now, obviously, you can only have one person move a mouse at any given moment. you'll have people sort of fighting back and forth between a mouse. But this gives us our next point on here, which is escalation management. So you can set priorities or level to every user that uses Pathfinder. And if they're on the same level, you can kind of fight back and forth between control of that PC. But if someone with a higher level wants to take control of that machine, they do. And people with lower level can't get it back until they release it. So this provides sort of a nice escalation track for these command and control rooms, which typically are just monitoring until there's an event. And then they've got to kind of click into kind of a management or control mode. And so this gives you a nice ability to sort of send that up the chain and not have to worry about somebody thinking that they can control that PC when the sergeants or upper management or whatever have it and they're looking at it. So command and control is a great place to see and use these applications. Healthcare is also really very strong vertical these days, and there's a lot of use for this. They're always mixing multiple PCs or multiple content, layering them, trying to see and as much information as possible before they make a decision. And so we definitely find ourselves in this space quite often. Being able to use fiber, that gives us our galvanic isolation, which is critical in the medical field. The auto discovery that I mentioned of just being inherent to layer 2. So this actually came up as a really interesting use case in medical. So a lot of times they have a push cart. Essentially, it's basically a mobile workstation, and they're going to move that to wherever they need to do their thing, and they want to just be able to plug it in. And so if they do that and plug it into a Pathfinder port, that's auto discovered. They can log in and they see everything that they're supposed to see without any additional changes or gaffing about with their hardware. They just go on with their day. And being that we have such low latency, it's very responsive in how quickly they can get a mobile cart up and running. So this was a really interesting use case that sort of came from their needs, and we fit great into it. The low latency is critical to them. Again, 4K 60 444 is certainly a requirement in this space. And the fact that we support high-speed USB, that's all part of being transparent with USB. Whatever you put in is what you're going to get out of it. And so we're not just doing HID speeds here. We're giving you the full 480 megs on USB 2.0. The next one on here is financial. I've worked in financial institutions. Any place with like a trader floor or something like that, your users have way too many monitors, and so the use of a KVM becomes really necessary. And as we start to do things like window view, we can start to offer these users a solution that was never available to them in the past. They felt like they needed 10 different screens or whatever, and in reality, we can show them multiple sources on one display, and they can move between them all at real time and at full res. So window view is definitely critical. Being able to control 16 PCs at one workstation, that 16 is a lot, and actually it's as far as I know, it's higher than what other solutions are available out there. We do mention New York Stock Exchange here. It's funny, Magenta Research, when our very first product was a KVM for the New York Stock Exchange about 30 years ago, and so we've kind of made a full circle back to our roots. Currently, we're still in the New York Stock Exchange. We use some of our matrixing and extension products to we run all the screens on the trading floor around the room, not the trader workstations, but around the room. And so we are already in discussions with New York Stock Exchange. They use KVM all over the place, not just on the floor, but in their reception desks and things like that. They want to have the ability for people to use multiple PCs. They've known this this value for a long time. As I mentioned, we're on layer 2, so there's sort of an inherent security to that. So we're on our own physical network, which means you've got to have physical access to it. You can't get to the Pathfinder network through the web, and even if you do gain physical access to it, our codec is proprietary. You'd need a Pathfinder endpoint to sort of decode it and to do anything with it. And so there is an inherent secureness to Pathfinder just by nature. Talk about USB transparency. This is a great space to where this comes into great effect. So in almost every financial institution and a lot of corporations, you can't use a thumb drive. You can't walk in and plug a USB thumbstick into a machine. That's not okay. And so we're able to actually look at the USB streams and we can lock out any sort of media storage device. So what happens when a user has a keyboard and on that keyboard are USB ports or an SD card slot or something like that, and they plug in a media storage? What works? Does the keyboard work? Does the storage device work? Does nothing work? Well, if you don't want to allow that user or that workstation to have media storage devices, then the keyboard still works for Pathfinder, and we can lock out the media storage. We can look at the entire stream and lock out what you've defined. So again, this can be system wide. This can be down to a user or a specific workstation, whatever you want to do. Pathfinder is sort of flexible in that way that you can have a user sit down and see everything, or they only see their group, or they have a specific login to their specific machines, however tight you want to make it. And so Pathfinder kind of offers that flexibility in sort of a large system rollout. Another application is broadcast. This is a really good space for the use of KVMs. In a lot of broadcast facilities now, there is typically, one sound stage, but multiple control rooms, for example. And they do that so that they can run a show in one control room and practice or set up the next show in another control room or something like that. Or if there's maintenance needs to be done, they can bring down one control space, move to control room B, and run their shows in that way. Well, if every single workstation is essentially on a matrix and every PC in the facility is available to them, that makes it really easy. You just change a global preset if you want, or you sit down and log into whatever workstation you're at and you get the things that you need. So that starts to become really, really important in this space, to have the ability to sort of share resources. The other thing is that not every single one of those positions, those workstations, are the same for every single show that's done in a broadcast space. Sometimes it'll be a Chiron operator sitting there. Sometimes it'll be a teleprompter. I don't know. Somebody else sitting in that space. So to be able to change what those workstations or what those PCs are has a lot of value. Again, being able to use multiple PCs from one keyboard, one mouse, being able to use window view, you're now offering solutions that were never possible in the past. People, they believe that they have to have multiple monitors or whatever, and now we can kind of create something a little more slick and user friendly with the help of window view. As I mentioned, fanless, the cooling. This is it was obvious to us, but in some spaces, people feel like if I'm going to remove a PC because it's big, loud, and noisy, and put in a small device that's got a loud, high-pitched fan, that's not a very that's a net zero, and so this is turning out to be a nice plus for Pathfinder. Is we're we're passively cooled, and that's important to some people. So I definitely mention it here. And I realize I'm going fast. If you guys have questions and things like that, please just chime in. Another application I wanted to mention was with transportation. So we've definitely been contacted by air traffic control applications and things like that. The ability to use window view is really important to these guys. To be able to see multiple sources in real time at full resolution makes a difference, and especially when they're trying to make decisions quickly based on a lot of information. But the scalability of Pathfinder is really important in this space. You know, they can be looking at thousands of cameras or you know, sources, whatever, and trying to collate all that or manage an event or something that's going on in their space, and you know, being able to scale is a big deal. Not being, you know, a lot of times with current solutions out there in the world, you're locked into a certain size server or switch or something like that, and that's just not the case here for Pathfinder. We can keep growing. Transportation is always remarkable to me. If any of you have ever had a chance to go to Amsterdam in the Netherlands, you'll notice that there's a ton of bridges. There's all canals all over the place, and a lot of those bridges are drawbridges. And so somebody is sitting there operating that drawbridge or multiple drawbridges, and we're talking about hundreds and hundreds of drawbridges in one city. And so I met with these guys, and so they were explaining how there are, you know, 12 or 15 cameras on every bridge. There's a gate for the pedestrians, a gate for the bikes, a gate for the cars. There's the bridge. There's communications to the boats. Like it's this unbelievable choreography that they have to do just to open up one bridge, and that's done by one guy sitting in a room someplace. And so a KVM is vital. And they've got to be able to mix different types of sources to be able to time all this together. Otherwise, somebody gets hurt. And so this is a very powerful application for KVM. Having no latency, super important here. Working with full res, and security always comes up in this place. You can't hack into this. Like I said, you got to have physical access. So, you know, talking about those applications and those features, I'm sure you can imagine and think about some of the other spaces where these things get used a lot, or where customers or users are trying to do something, and it's combining multiple PCs or touch or whatever. And essentially, anytime somebody wants to use a computer as a source, not just like a video playback sort of source, a KVM product becomes really important. And the difference between, for example, a video extension product with USB versus a KVM product would be being able to use multiple or different OSs, for example. You know, so we don't care if it's Linux or Mac OS or PC, Windows. It doesn't matter to us. We provide BIOS level access to those machines. If that machine goes to sleep, you know, like a power goes to sleep kind of thing, we can wake it up. We can emulate USB and wake up that PC. Those are things that an HD-based link can't do. Being able to share that source between multiple users, you can't do that with a video extension. You've got to have something more powerful. So when users want to use a computer as a source, they're going to gain a lot by looking to a KVM type solution.
Mark,
so
we have
yeah.
a question come in, and pretty good one actually. Is the loop out port on the 500 series HDCP compliant, or is HDCP stripped off?
Great question. Note that HDCP is there. So you can certainly use that. That the intention is so that we're providing you another path for that computer or that source. We're not trying to break your your ability to have sort of a local terminal or whatever. So absolutely, you can use that. Great question. And great eye. We looked at that slide a long time ago, so we can go back to that. There is my buddy told me this really neat trick to just bring up the grid. So um, here's those endpoints again for those that may not have been looking as closely as that. What you will notice about these, so you've got your loop outs. There's actually more than one on our 800 series for DisplayPort, and that's actually because we have a built-in MST hub. So for those that know and love DisplayPort, that's a standard, and you can use MST to send more than one signal over a single DisplayPort cable, essentially. And so that's just built in. MST does not allow you to send two 4K images. It's knocked down to like 2560 by 1600 or something like that. But that's built into the product, and you can use those actually to duplicate out if you wanted to do something like extend to a workstation, but then also duplicate to a like a projector or something like that in the room. You could that second output on the decoder is live. So
Along the
always,
lines of
yeah.
the IOs on this, are HDMI and USB 3.0 a factor? And if they are, I guess, would there be a future product with Pathfinder having them?
Yeah, so with the DVI, with our HD series, you can passively convert to HDMI. DisplayPort, we are also finding that it's actually not too problematic to change between HDMI and DisplayPort. As far as USB 3.0 goes, at the moment we are just supporting 2, and a lot of that comes down to what people are doing with USB. Typically, not all the time, but typically users that require USB 3.0 are sending video via USB 3.0. And we already have a video channel here. So unless we're talking about potentially the speeds required, for file transfer or something like that, typically you can get what you need from a video and from a video channel, but I don't know if there was any additional information on that question, but yeah. So at the moment, just USB 2.0.
And also a follow-up to the, it looks like the HDCP factor, are these devices TAA?
TAA. What is?
I was hoping you knew.
What is TAA? I'm sorry. Please tell me what TAA is. I'm about to Google it.
I could, I guess if the person who would ask that question could put it in the chat, help us out. I see Frank Brady has replied saying, yes, they are. I'm not sure. Maybe Frank can tell us what TAA is standing for, but.
That would be great. Frank, you're amazing. Well, fill us in and we'll answer that question if we can. I forgive me. I don't know if that's like a certification or something like that. If it is, then I haven't heard of it. But let's keep going. I think we're rocking this. So let's talk a little bit about the network and the way that you put this system together. It's actually really easy. Again, you can use off-the-shelf switches. They just need to be managed switches, because that's where you're going to find IGMP snooping. Sometimes you can find that in a non-managed switch, but we find it's really safe to say it needs to be a managed switch because that we'll definitely find that ability there. And then when you lay out your system, you design it, it's got to be non-blocking. So for a data system or a network system, that's not that non-blocking is insanity. But essentially, it means that every port is going to get that full bandwidth all the time. So 1 gig, 10 gig encoders and decoders, those are expected to have their full bandwidth all the time. And again, as I mentioned, either a dedicated switch or a VLAN if you're using enterprise stuff. We're SFP based, I'll remind you. So that gives you a lot of flexibility in how you want to put together this network out to your encoders and decoders or across your campus or whatever. We have a really good partnership with Netgear. Again, I'll say this several times, you don't have to use Netgear. You can use whatever you want. Netgear's been working hard, and we don't make any money. We don't sell Netgear. We don't make any money with that. But they've worked really hard to get into our AV space, our pro AV space. They've created a whole new group and a whole line of switches. Their M4300 switches are all part of this, and essentially right out of the box, zero configuration. They work with Pathfinder. And not only that, but they'll also provide pre and post sale support. So you could literally call Netgear and say, I've got this many Pathfinder endpoints. This is maybe where my switches have to live in relation to each other. What do I need? And they will provide you with an entire network system drawing, all the BOM, all the parts that you'll need to build that network, and then they'll support you. That becomes a Netgear certified network. And then they'll provide you support while you set it up and install it. They have things like lifetime warranties and next day replacement. So they're a great partner as far as we're concerned. And I urge you to use them if you can. If you've got stuff, you've got someone that you like a little bit better, no problem. IGMP snooping, non-blocking, you're going to be just fine. Every time I think that thing comes down every time we have a question. I will do a quick plug about CorioMaster 2. tvONE is very well known for our video wall processors, and this is a space where video walls live a lot, and so we are already seeing where a Pathfinder opportunity comes up, and we can say, hey, is there a video wall in the room? And we can provide a solution for both. The ability to push to that video wall from an individual workstation, or to take a source that's already up there, duplicate it, yada yada. Those are built-in functionality of Pathfinder, and it makes for a really good, clean installation. And vice versa. Our CorioMaster installations, we're now able to sort of ask, hey, where is this going? Do you have KVM? Because we can help you integrate all that together. The last thing I want to mention is around the color. So our device is that color. We're magenta. That's a magenta anodized aluminum enclosure, but it's not just a color. Actually, every device that we sell, we are donating to the breast cancer awareness and research. Last month was Breast Cancer Awareness Month, so we did a lot of work to sort of get out that message and get everybody their checkups and stuff like that. So this is a very important cause to tvONE, and it's just one of the ways that tvONE is striving to be a more socially responsible company in the world, in addition to things like green packaging and stuff like that. Save the planet kind of thing, keep everybody safe. So I would be remiss without mentioning that. Please, if there's questions and things like that, let's do it. Here's just some information, some places you can go and check this out. All the information, the spec sheets, the brochures, all that stuff's up there. There's some really, really good videos that'll show you how some of these features work and how to set stuff up. That's all available to you. You can scan that QR code there. Were there some more questions that popped in there?
One of the questions that came through was regarding the SFPs. It
Yeah.
says we have found that all SFPs are not created equal. Or is it merely using an MSA SFP plus 10G system, or do you have a proprietary SFP?
Great question. Great question. So we do not want to be in the SFP business. They're just SFP pluses that we're using. We have some that we've certified, and I think we get them through like FiberStore or something like that. So we know that they work. But essentially, what we found is that they can't be. They have to be fixed speed. So some of like the 10, 100, 1000 speed SFPs they just don't work. But if you get a fixed 1 gig or a fixed 10 gig SFP plus, those seem to be fine. We're more than happy to work with you if you don't want to buy our SFPs. We're not trying to make money or mark those up in a major way. We just know that they work, so it's really out of convenience. I will say with copper SFPs, this is still sort of a new SFP in the market space for whatever reason, and so they're a little more expensive in general than a fiber. So a copper Pathfinder system would be more expensive than a fiber Pathfinder system. But we're pretty upfront with our costs and prices, and we're not really like relabeling them and pretending that they're tvONE or Magenta SFPs. That they're just a sort of requirement of the technology these days. So great question. They're not all the same, that's for sure. Anything else?
I don't see any other questions on the board. We'll give you guys another 10, 15 seconds if somebody wants to chuck one up to the Q&A.
We practiced this yesterday, guys, and it took me longer. So I did some changes and made sure that I could get through this in the right amount of time today, because I could spend all week talking about Pathfinder.
No, you did great timing wise. It's right on time, which is fantastic. As we all know, people's time is certainly valuable these days.
It is, and I really appreciate everybody joining us for this. Again, go to these websites and get some more information. Please contact us if you want things like a demo or an evaluation piece, things like that. We're happy to support you in your projects as you get going. And we want to hear from you for sure.
And to put a final wrapper on it from our end, of course, reach out to your TechNex sales representative if you need more information. These also we can make available as demo units for those who wish to trial them out. And that's easy enough for us to handle. And again, I want to thank tvONE and Mark for joining us today. A copy of today's presentation will also be available on the TechNex YouTube channel, and we'll also post it on social media, so we can follow up through if you need to recap any of the information we got here. And again, thank you, Mark. You're a font of information on this topic for sure.
Thank you.
And everybody enjoy your afternoon.
Great. Have a great day, everybody.